My guest today, who you can also follow at Mr. Armand King from Walk with Me Impact. Today, I'm really excited to bring you this conversation. I'm joined by Armand King from Walk with Me Impact. You can follow on all platforms at WWM Impact. Armand, this is a great project you are involved in and you are taking full control of. Tell us about how you got started with the Walk with Me Impact.
Wow. So the long yet short version of this, because I know time is of the essence. I started working on this about 2 years ago, right before the COVID pandemic. I was in Houston doing a training for Crime Stoppers on human sex trafficking, and just really. Not that I hadn't had these thoughts before, but at that point, like a light bulb went off of we were creating and talking about services for women and intervention and helping them after they exit the lifestyle of human sex trafficking or being victims. And which rightfully so, we need it. We need better services. We need more services. But when the conversation ever came to the men and the young men involved, it was either like really burn them at the stake, kill them, or send them to jail forever. And I don't condone the lifestyle. I don't condone, negative behavior, but I understand where it comes from. And it's like, can we help these men, help these young men before they even go down that path? And not just that path. That's where I come from. That's one of the paths that, some men in the community, like myself and my peers, we go down based out of poverty, based out of trying to make a way out of no way, systemic racism, lack of opportunities and resources, and that includes drug addiction, drug sales, criminal activity, gang involvement, all of those things. So the curriculum really was born out of the idea of I want to help people before they enter the life. How do we help these kids? Because no kid like myself is 6 years old and the teacher asks that age old question, what do you want to be when you grow up? And no kid raised their hand and say, I want to kill people and be a member of a gang. I want
I
to.
want to go to jail.
Hey,
I want to go to jail.
when's that field trip? Sign me up. No kid
Yeah.
does that. So like, let's get to them before those thoughts enter. And they just out of my own lived experience, it's called Walk with Me. And I created a curriculum based on what would I tell myself on a walk. What would I tell my friends? Out of 8 of my best friends, I'm one of 4 that's still alive. My friends are dead. What would I have said to them to maybe help them still be here right now? And that's the shorter version of where it was birthed out of. And yeah, it is much so needed more than ever
Well,
nowadays.
because the situations, a lot of the situations that present themselves are probably merely just coming from their environment, from their lack of other tools or resources, from the lack of the finances that would be there for them to be active in sports teams or in other group activities. And so falling into a group can be something that just happens without them realizing the ramifications of what group they're getting involved with.
100%. And we're humans. Every human, it's a natural instinct of ours. We want to be accepted. We want to be we want people to group settings. Like we want to be involved and oftentimes in the hood, in impoverished communities, these kids can't afford the little league, the baseball
Right.
camps. They can't afford the golf club, what now the pickleball. They can't afford these things. Boy Scouts, they can't afford them. So when you have these other groups like that are called gangs, which are young men, gang could be a fraternity. A gang could be the Republicans or the Democrats. They're involved. So these young men, they get accepted by these groups of other men like them, young boys who, and the
Yep.
only thing they have to offer, there's no membership fee. It's you just have to have heart. You can have flooded pants, you can be poor, and all you have to offer is your heart. Well, this young man has that to offer. So now he's accepted. And then the other stuff, leads from there. But we're humans. We want to be accepted by somebody. So I get it.
Yeah, I mean it's an instinct of all of ours. The Walk with Me Impact project has a Kickstarter right now going to August 31st. You are raising funds to get together packages promotions, videos, and things to educate not just the young men, but the teachers and parents on how to handle what this generation is up against that's so different: violence, gun shootings in schools, these things.
Correct, correct. So that Kickstarter that's going on right now, where our project is about 75% complete. We need the money to finalize it. We have audio production because with the homework that we call missions, because no kid or adult likes homework. I know you don't. I don't. So
No,
right,
no. But
if
to
I
us as
say
kids, it was like, let's get on our bike and go to a mission, go to the candy store. That was a mission. We were going to the
right.
candy store, we're going to buy
Yeah,
some
we
candy.
call it a mission. It's just a simple switch of word. So, oftentimes as adults, we're like, why aren't these kids learning? Why aren't they coming up to our level? Sometimes go down to theirs. Look at yourself
Yeah.
as a kid. Walk with me.
Yes.
What did I need to tell me? And if I told me, here's your homework, I wouldn't do it. If I told me, hey, young Armand, I'm about to send you on a mission. Your mission is to listen to this rap song. I'm going to listen. And knowing music has a strong influence over young brains and old brains. I was a kid. I don't remember anything a sixth grade teacher ever taught me. I don't remember anything a teacher ever taught me. Not that they didn't. I can't remember.
Right.
But ask me to recite a Snoop Dogg line from 1993. I bet you I'll do it.
Yes, 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 yes.
Somebody was teaching me, right? So we thinking like that. So we want to be impactful. We want to actually, people produce curriculums. There's a bunch of curriculums out there and programs. So, but what are the impactful things? What is really going to change this life? Not just doing this for a box check, but I want to help change this kid's life. So yeah, so the curriculum that we have the audio production, the video production, because we're capturing lived experience experts, people that have been there, done that, to help go as a visual aid, because some people that administer the program may not look like or come from the background that the kids they're helping are, although they have a heart for it.
Sure,
So
sure.
we want to back them up.
You're right about, making sure that the messenger has a good grip on the message and has different ways to convey it, because there's a gap there. There's also a generation gap. It's just like a generation gap with parents or potentially even grandparents that are raising these young men that don't know that these kids have already seen a gun maybe by 8 years old. Maybe their friend's older brother had a gun and some drugs on a table, things that they're exposed to that they might not even know yet are the worst case scenario for them at that age, but they are being exposed.
Absolutely realistic. So, and you're not there with your kid 24 hours a day, every day of the week. That's impossible, especially if you have to work a
Mhm.
job. Especially, I don't know where you are. If you're in California, you might have to work 3 jobs, have a
Three
side hustle,
jobs.
and you're selling stuff on Facebook Marketplace on the side. You cannot be there all the time. So that's why
No,
it was very important and crucial, not just to create this curriculum for people to use, but we have this very powerful facilitators guide, helping the mentor to be a better mentor, helping them to look for signs of danger, educating them on adverse childhood experiences, trauma informed care, and then also things to make them just a better person and to be able to deal with the high risk, high need population of kids. And like dealing with death, like one thing we do touch on in the curriculum for the kids and for the mentor, when you the loss of life, which is very very unfortunately common. I
yeah.
myself, last year alone, I lost a loved one every single month of the year. I
Oh,
lost 7 mentees last year. I lost my cousin, buried my cousin who was the first member of my nonprofit program that I had 10 years ago. Had to bury him. So it's very. I needed help. I needed help to
yeah,
grieve, to cope. So knowing me, and I'm 40 years old, just having those those skills that were never given to me. I've lost friends since I was 12 years old. Most of my best friends are dead. Never was there a therapist. Never was there a time I remember an adult actually asking me, "How are you doing?" You lose a friend to homicide one day. I'm saying I'll go 15 years old. A friend dies, murdered, not natural causes, not even a car hit him, which are all traumatic too. But your friend is murdered.
sure.
You go back to school, you cry that night, you cry that morning, you go to school the next day with the teacher that's banging you over the head because you're not learning your social studies. You didn't turn in your social studies homework or learned about George Washington. And I can't even think about that because let alone I'm homeless at this time too. All of these compounded trauma. Then you go to a funeral service 2 weeks later, you see your friend's dead body. You're traumatized as a kid.
Yes.
And then what you do? What did I do? I drunk, I smoked, and nowadays the kids, what didn't exist when I was younger was this major pharmaceutical push. People are popping pills, which is another major thing that we deal with in this curriculum. So yeah, it's a lot of trauma that the adults are dealing with, the kids are dealing with, and we make sure these lessons are incorporated because what we don't want to see is the continuation of kids dealing with this trauma and they just pack it in like me. I'm that kid, who had to realize later on down the road that man, I needed
That you never
help.
dealt with it.
Never
Yeah,
dealt with it.
that you never dealt with it. And with this curriculum, you can help teachers have the conversation when there is something really tragic that happens at another school. That's when the conversation should be started too, because kids get anxious about their own school and violence in their neighborhood. It all starts to really get heavy, and teachers need to feel comfortable opening this line of communication with young men, especially if a young man loses an older brother to overdosing. Yes, right now his parents are going through it and the family is coming over, but is anybody pulling this kid aside in his comfort unit, which could be his classroom with his classmates, and saying, is there anything you want to talk about? How do you feel about it?
Absolutely. Just sometimes just having that safe space to talk about these issues. And if you don't, then the kid doesn't know, I need to talk about this. I need help. They don't realize that at that time, and with this unfortunate string of school shootings, you have the unfortunate loss of life, of young life. What about the kids that are still here, that was just playing with
Yes.
that other kid the day before, that morning? That kid is traumatized. If those traumas aren't faced, helped, therapy, you name it, whatever we can give to those kids that are still here, they're growing up with this. And if they grew up in a impoverished community, a high crime neighborhood, and they're seeing this even on the regular, then that's even more trauma that they need help with. So this curriculum, it's not for Armand to use with my organization or my program. We're creating a tool for people to use, youth advocates everywhere, juvenile detention, teachers, and even customizable for mom, grandmom, single parent households who have the love for the kid, but they might not have the tools to give them this education. So we want this program to be as good as possible to help those individuals and help those groups to facilitate these conversations, to plant these seeds, plant this encouragement in the kid's life and help them so we can not. I'm tired. I want to destroy the preschool to prison pipeline. I'm
Yeah.
over it. I'm
Yeah.
tired of burying friends. I'm tired of people going to jail for lengthy times. I'm tired of it. How do we get to the root?
Overdoses.
Overdoses, just constantly. And then this fentanyl epidemic that's happening right now that's barely spoke about,
And
that's
it is
touched.
an epidemic. It is
It's
an
an
epidemic,
epidemic. There's been more loss of life, 18 to 45, last year, more to fentanyl than guns. And I can't wait until
which
we
is
start.
unbelievable. That
Unbelievable.
is an unbelievable number. So when we were growing up, we had Dare, and we had Dare, and we had Moms Against Drunk Drivers, and there were billboards and there were commercials, and if you watched MTV, it was on MTV. You're looking at curriculums now because you're seeing what's missing.
Right.
Are you able to really break down the different drugs so kids understand? Because I think pills is something that, oh, it's pharmaceutical, they think it's not street drugs. These are still street drug made pills. They're not always pure pharmaceuticals, and they're all dirty. And people who were normally taking something, Xanax to relax or something else to do something else for years of their life, now takes one, it's got a trace of fentanyl, and they're no longer with us.
And they're gone. So, like right now, currently working with a mentee of mine that I had. He's a social media influencer, Young Poppy. He used to work with me. I was a concert promoter before I got into this community activist work, and he was one of my promoters. And that's
So
before
funny. Small world, little
yeah,
world. Yeah.
he blew up on Vine, and Vine went to Instagram, and this a young man amassed a following of damn near 2 million followers. And just from him being his comical self, being natural, goofy guy, fun loving, beautiful individual, and got addicted to pharmaceutical pills, selling pills, and unfortunately, he is serving time right now off the loss of a off of someone's life. And he is heavily remorseful. He is using his influence now completely to now that he's been an addict since he was 15 years old. this man is
Oh,
this man is now clear-headed and just realizing, man, I want to help stop this. He didn't know he had fentanyl. He had overdosed twice himself in this process. Luckily he lived, but unfortunately people have died around him. And now we just want to get this word out, because the kids, they don't know, and it's become popular on in music, and you
yeah.
hear people talking and bragging about the pills, but it's not. I'm just using this recreation pill. I'm just using this recreation drug. You might be used to it. You're addicted to it, but now it's like Russian roulette. That one dosage, you're now dead instantly.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
it needs to be talked
And
about. The awareness needs to be out there.
And we're not. It's not out there. It's not something that we're talking about enough. I know they're starting to sell test strips where you're able to test drugs for fentanyl. In Norway, they allow their citizens to mail all of their drugs to the government. The government tests them and sends them back just because they don't want people to die, right? They're not, going and arresting them. It's a very different mindset, but here we are. And it's become part of pop culture. And, before I forget, you bring up young Poppy. He's who so aggressively was so kind and so lovely sharing this project with me and introduced me to you. And to know that now I understand the connection between the two of you. He didn't die because he was meant to be here to help get this message out with his influence and his powerful amount of followers that he's amassed, right? So now he's got a mission. He's on a mission and he's lovely. And it's sad to hear what it took for him to get here, but nobody is going to be more relatable on camera or in one-on-one situations than him because he's been there. Everybody can tell you, oh, don't do that. But if they've never walked that life and they've never been in that situation or had the, people around them to try it, they can't really say properly, he is going to be your greatest mentor.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that lived experience piece, it's crucial. You know, we can all give the same information, but when you have somebody that's walked that walk with me. Let me tell you what it's like to go to prison. Let me tell you what the consequences are, because I did that. A friend of mine the other day had said something about how when we were raised, our parents would their mentality was almost like, you see that hot pot on the stove and a kid's going to touch it. You're like, let him touch it. He'll learn. He'll learn. And
Yeah.
then, you let the kid touch the hot pot so they'll learn. But now I'm burned. I have a scar for my whole life. You know, how about we stop them?
Explain.
How about we
How about
explain
explaining so
that
the
we
temperature
try.
is hot?
They would sit back like, his ass will learn. Let him touch it. And when my friend said this, I heard that 1,000 times as a kid. Let them do it; they'll learn. No, how about I learn without the scars? How about I learn without the trauma, without the addictions? Teach me, warn me, and if like you just said, the best warners are people that have failed,
Yeah.
that have done it. So at that point, and like parents, youth mentors, we are seed planters. You cannot change an individual from doing anything. You can help them, you can guide them, but you can't stop them. So you plant these seeds, and in hopes that they, think about life differently, take different routes. But what you don't do is keep your mouth shut and not train and
Yeah.
teach the best that you can. We want people to
Because what
live.
we're trying to do is we're trying to give everyone the best tools, to succeed, right? We want this world to be a good place, a safe place where there's opportunity for everyone equally and everyone feels that they have that opportunity equally. And when you allow someone to just get into a situation where now you've been arrested a couple times, you're only 21 years old. I interviewed an incredible man, Andre Pert, about Con Connect.
Mm.
And it's like a LinkedIn for ex cons, and it's networking, it's job placement. And he said the hardest thing was going to job interviews. The interview would go great, but on the way out the door, they tell you, okay, well, we're going to do a background check on you now. And you knew you weren't going to get the job, but you needed to have the job to be able to stay out on parole. It is this vicious circular
Mhm.
cycle that doesn't really allow room for success. So without planting these seeds and without giving the youth today the tools and the teachers today the understanding of the tools, it can't get better without it.
It can't. And we've seen enough of that. We've tried to incarcerate our way out of our problems. That hasn't worked. It's time for
Yep.
new innovative methods. It's time for massive prevention. We don't want to have to some for kids nowadays, you can only get them in special programming and mentorship programs after they've got a juvenile record, after they've already gone down that path. Can we help them before? Can we put
Yeah.
some money into real intervention? I'm not making up the solutions, right? I have a sixth grade education. I say I graduated high school, but I stopped learning in the sixth grade. So I'm real basic. I'm Flintstone, right? Okay, you can go listen to every Tupac album ever, NWA, Martin Luther King. They were yelling solutions for the inner city way back when. But when are we going to act upon them? What I've done with this curriculum is I've taken the best practices that I've been in this work for about 12 years now. I've seen what works. I've touched the lives. I've seen them change, and I've seen it not just from my work and my team's work, but I've seen other programs with great things that work. So I've borrowed, we put it together in a package to give to others. Because when you're like, I feel like I've been at war in Afghanistan for the past 12 years, you don't have the time to compile a curriculum, to compile a workbook, a mentor guide. I wish there was a mentor guide like this 10 years ago that would have helped me advance. But now I've been able to take the time out, sit down, put this together as a resource tool for others, not just here in it's aimed at North America, United States, Canada, but this can help anywhere where people have the similar situations to what's going on here in the inner cities of America.
You also talk about the parents, you can't be with them all the time. And that's a complete real thing. The amount of work people are doing to just get by is really, and then now there's the internet, now there's social media, now there's ways they can buy drugs without even leaving their house and you don't know it. How helpful do you think this is going to be for parents who just may not? Because I think the one thing I see with my friends that have young teens is they don't want to accept that their kid is at an age where these things could be happening around them. Like, if you don't think your 14-year-old seen drugs and pills by now, you're out of your mind. But a lot of parents be like, oh, no, no, no. My kid, she's a good kid. I'm like, kids are the greatest actors. We know how to be good kids in front of our parents at a reunion, at a Memorial Day picnic, in front of our aunts. We know exactly. We know what to wear. We know what to do. But you better believe we go to school, we're changing. You know what I mean? We're doing everything different. How helpful do you think this is for parents to be able to see what's out there and how to explain drugs and talk about fentanyl to
Mhm.
their kids? Talk about the fact that, man, we talked about crack like there wasn't even going to be a United States by 1989. You know what I mean? We thought like it really, no, it was
I know.
serious. It
Yeah.
was fearful. You saw somebody smoking crack. I remember going to Philly as a young girl and seeing that, and you would just like run because you were so afraid that just like the fumes would kill you. How do you get parents to understand that there's more learning for them to do at all ages to protect their children from bad elements?
Man, so as hard and as unfiltered as I could say, parents, shake that off. Your kids are dying. I don't care how
Yep.
wealthy you are, how well off you think you are. And just to touch on what you just said about the kids knowing how to fake in front, they learned it from their parents. How often are you act one way on the phone when there's a bill collector, when your mom's on the phone, when your significant other's on the phone and you code switch? That kid has been studying you their whole life. They know exactly how to
Right.
be fake and front because they learned it from you. But they know how to
Yes.
lie. No baby ever had to go to a school to learn how to lie. Did you eat that watermelon? No, mom. No. Who taught that baby how to lie? It knows. So shake it off. Your kid's life is on the line. If you,
Yeah.
especially now, you talk about social media. So, social media is a category in itself in this curriculum, teaching kids
Okay.
to watch out for things in social media, not just being lured into bad actions, but also the real life.
Predators.
Yeah,
There's a lot of
predators.
predators
There's
on the internet
predators.
trying to say they're a 14-year-old boy and they're not.
They're a police officer that wants you to go to jail. I'll tell you, it's all kind of predators on there. I've seen young kids right now that have a cop on the other end of that Instagram DM that is messaging them like they're a girl that wants you to come get her, and it's really a police officer the whole time because you on your social media platform pretended like you were a pimp hustler playboy. So we not just the other end of
Mm.
someone trying to get you for other things. There's so many traps there that need to be pointed out. I have been in the courtroom with kids who have just posted something fraudulent to look cool and now they have an actual charge because of that and they link you
Wow.
to conspiracies. There's so much that needs to be warned, and I'm in the court more than lawyers. Trust me, I'm a federal and state court expert all over the United States. So I deal with these cases and nobody is telling the kids. You think your Snapchat disappeared after 24 hours. You think your story disappeared out of 24 hours. Everything you post can and will be held against you in a court of law. I forgot the name. I will bring it up. I tech message you, but there's a service that the federal government uses and they will pull up every single post, every single text message that you ever created, whether you deleted it or not. So you have kids thinking they're being fun, playing with gangs, they have drugs. They're not getting you because they don't want to get you. But if they want to, if your
They
friend
have you.
does something, they incorporate you because that's your friend, and now you're wondering why you got 7 to 10 years in prison. So understanding social media. So parents need to understand this too because they don't know that, and they need to tell
Yeah.
their kids. And and one thing about sugarcoating information nowadays, you can't do that. You never should have done it, but now even more so. If you start talking about a topic, we mentioned dare. Dare, in my opinion, was a sugarcoated information type of thing. I dare to me when I had dare instructors, it just made me want to go get high after. Like they should have gave me the raw. They should have brought in pictures of crackheads. They should have brought in
Yeah.
a crackhead. They should have brought in this is what happens. That might have
Take us
touched
to the morgue.
right.
Take some
Take
kids to the
me
morgue. These are the kids
field
that
trip
took
to the
fentanyl
morgue.
yesterday. Yep.
100%. So, like, if you bring up a subject, talk about drugs, talk about trafficking, talk about fentanyl, and you just barely tap the surface. Now, your kid who has that phone in his hand, her hand, a phone more powerful than what Ronald Reagan used to run the free world. He didn't have a device that powerful. They're gonna Google, they're gonna YouTube,
Yeah.
whatever that fentanyl, and who knows what's about to come up. They're gonna get 1,000 messages and it might be the wrong message. Educate your kids, educate yourself so you can
Yes.
educate your kids. And don't be naive. I don't care what the suburb you live in and you think my kids aren't susceptible to this. And the streets are so attractive. I see more girls, dudes that are lured from the suburbs because they want to be part
Oh
of the hood
yeah.
culture. You've got
Hmm.
people in the hood that can't wait to get out, and you got people in the suburbs that can't wait to be like that. Come on, man. Come on.
This lack of education is really proving to be, working against us. And this lack of information with fentanyl, with the amount of deaths every day. If there was a ticker tape that you could have on the news once in a while that would just remind us every
Mhm.
day, you read it, you read these stories, you read these sad stories, family in the suburbs, kid bought it off of a social media app. Somebody showed up at his house and just dropped it in his bedroom window, just takes one pill, he's dead. These are stories that we're just breezing over. We're not taking seriously, but what you're doing is going to change that. I look forward to the day when you've got class upon classes of young men that are empowering other young men the same age, because once they feel that inspiration inside of them, and once they know that there are no limits if they do not allow limits to be placed on them, once you're giving them these tools, they're going to say, why would I want that? Why would I want to go to jail and never be able to have that opportunity? Why would I want to not be able to make money and have a nice life? This was actually, once we see that, these kids are going to go out there and work for you.
Absolutely. So that's the goal. So the people that are going through the program, going through the curriculum, wherever they're at, not only is it equipping them with prevention skills to not go down these paths, but also coping skills if they've gone through something similar, so it's not compounded trauma. But what it's also doing is empowering them for their peers, their friends that aren't their older brother, younger brother that's not in that program, getting those tools, getting those seeds. They can now help them. And this portion of the curriculum, this is the first phase directed towards young men. Walk with me is what I called it. And I couldn't write walk with me with that spirit to a young girl because I wasn't a young girl. I could write to a young man. But since then, I've had some of my sister leaders come to me like, we need a girl version of this. And even though it's very similar, it would be, but there's some direction and guidance that only a woman and that been there, done that
Yeah.
can tell a young girl. I wouldn't know some of these nuances, so that's coming. We're also planning on doing a a Spanish version of this program as well. One of these phases is going to be one just directed specifically towards foster kids. Kids that are going through the
Oh,
foster care system, because that is a very sensitive population right there. And I couldn't even put myself in the shoes of a kid who's never had a parent, been tossed around
or has
house
been
to
moved
house.
around. Yeah, the
You know,
moving around,
so
the constant every 2, 3 years, the no stability, to not knowing what they're looking forward to. See, when you grew up in a
not
home,
feel love
you
ever.
and not feel love. But you looked forward to one day, oh, I'm going to have my own place to live. You had these visions because you lived that way. They've shared space with strangers and never been around something consistent. Consistency is so important
Important.
for young people. But what you're doing in your post, I love your social media posts. There was one last Friday. Happy Friday, instilling hashtag core values into the hearts and minds of our youth, core directions you study. What I love about it is like, we're not addressing our youth as powerful as they truly are, and you do. And so I know that all of my followers, especially if you're a parent, if you have nieces, nephews, younger siblings, you need to follow all these social media profiles at WWM Impact, and follow Armand King at Mr. Armand King, so that we can make this happen. That Kickstarter, April 31st, August 31st is the cutoff, but it is going to be, you are going to reach your goal. I'm going to make sure that you reach your goal, because I think this is fascinating. And we're going to stay in touch so I can learn more about the progress of this as it goes, and potentially help out in any way that I can.
I appreciate you've done a great deal just by doing this and sharing your platform. I do not take this lightly. Thank you, and just please, anybody who's touched by this, please help support. Look into it. Kickstarter, Walk with Me Impact, every social media platform. We're there. We are not trying to hide. We're trying to be the beacon of light, helping you got the light guiding you through the tunnel and at the end of the tunnel. We just don't want to be at the end and as you stumble through this dark tunnel. We want to help guide these kids and people through it. So yeah,
I
thank
love it. Thanks for your time today.
absolutely my pleasure.
That was an awesome conversation. And as soon as I finished talking to Armand King, I said, I have to introduce you to Andre Pert, who is the founder of Con Connect. If you recall, I had Andre Pert on this podcast. If you haven't watched that episode or listened to it, please go and look it up, because it's a fascinating story about like a LinkedIn. But it's Con Connect. It's a LinkedIn for ex cons to get out, to fight recidivism, to get less inmates out going back in, right? What we want to do is we want to give everyone the tools. Everyone deserves a second chance. But if that second chance is limited, then it's not going to be successful. And with what Armand King is doing, this first chance will not be limited, because now the resources will be available for students, for educators, for mentors, for all of us to raise awareness about things that may not be covered properly on the news, may not be shared directly. And the fear factor is not what we're going for, but the fear factor has to be real. And we have to let everyone have all of the knowledge they can to make the best decisions, to have the best life, and to create the future for the world that we're living in today. I'd also like to thank my sponsor, Blue Chew.